So we're both from the real world. We're SHIELD agents. Our bodies are being held captive, and this is all a virtual prison built to keep us sedated. Am I missing anything?
No, that's about the gist of it.
I knew I wasn't crazy.
Hey, Mr. Coulson, my homework was done, I swear. But then my dad made me...
Amy, we've been over this. Until first bell, this is my time.
Right? Okay, geez, sorry.
It's okay. Hydra used Cambridge to take control. In the name of law and order, to justify everything. It wasn't supposed to be like this.
I knew if anyone would understand, it'd be you.
I would have figured it out a long time ago if it wasn't for the mind control soap.
Yeah. Wait, what?
That blue soap everyone uses? Hydra loads it up with chemicals. It seeps into our bloodstream, implants false memories into our brains. They want us to believe this is a magical place. But don't worry, I'm clear. I make my own soap now.
No, I think that you're talking about Project Tahiti. They mess with your head a little bit, which is why you probably remember some things. But why don't we put the soap theories on hold just for 1 second? Okay. Yeah?
We got a problem.
Oh, you have no idea.
Something big's going down over here. They're sending a unit to pick up your teacher friend.
You're gonna need a substitute.
Factor Theory Live. Steve Crawford here. See, that first clip there, that was presented in a way that is fantastical, right? So they can tell us what's going on. Like I've been saying, they give us little hints in TV shows and movies. Well, there we go. There was a nice one. But they cover it up in a fantasy show. So then it's like, well, they're telling us, but damn it, you know? They're getting really good at that. Here's another one. In this show, everything on it was being portrayed realistically. It was a fantasy show, but I'm starting to think almost everything about it was true, or at least one or two key parts were, because it was canceled after only one season. And when I tried to put a clip of this up on my Factor Theory Live Facebook page, it was gone, disappeared. Not even oh, you're breaking copyrights or anything like that. You're going to notice a lot of the fair use copyrights on this episode, because I want to make sure they get it into them. I'm not getting paid for this. Anybody, NBC, whoever I'm taking clips from, go ahead and monetize. When I put it on YouTube, go ahead and monetize. I don't care. I'm not doing this for money. This is practice and fun for me. Things I find interesting. This is the next thing I find interesting. It was a great show. It should still be going. But you'll see why in a moment. Things like this next clip are the reason it was canceled. Factor Theory Live.
Special. There isn't anything like it in this world or the one we left behind. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, me too. Come on, let's go.
Where are we?
Anywhere you want to be. Some people call this place the Eye, because you can see all of history from here. It's all stored in this liquid memory core. It's kind of like a great big library that has everything we know in one spot.
Sit down. Let me show you. Come here. Begin. So, pick a place.
How about where I was born?
Where you were born. You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. 2143. Illinois. Aerial view. Move in. Cook County, North Sector. Punch in. Stop. See that? That house is where you were born.
Why there?
Well, that's where we had to go. Because we weren't allowed to have you. But we wanted you so much that we didn't care what the rules were. So we went to a doctor friend of Mommy's who lived way far away from the city. Oh, you see that room there? There was a rocking chair right by the window. Sometimes you'd wake up in the middle of the night and I would hold you close and I would rock you. And you would look out at the rain and fall back asleep. Okay, where to next?
A roller coaster.
A roller coaster? Who told you about those?
I read about them once. And they look fun.
Okay. Roller coasters. That one. Commence program.
Not too shabby, eh? So this next clip is going to be from my favorite show. Recently had a contest. We had 4 people win Factor Theory Live t-shirt for answering the question, what was my favorite show? It was kind of a trick question, and there was a good reason for it, because Garrett Wong is going to be on my show.
Hi, this is Garrett Wong, and I'm looking forward to working with Stephen Crawford and Emma Gold Productions on a new project, Factor Theory Live.
We have a contract that is actually kind of open-ended, so we're going to see what happens there. Things could get interesting.
How they doing? Oh, a few cuts and bruises.
What happened after he beamed up? You, make some kind of deal?
He thinks we're considering it.
Are we?
Captain. What'd you see down there?
We were in some huge building, like a factory. They're constructing something big. Germans are helping them.
I overheard them talking. They mentioned something about a temporal conduit. I know it sounds crazy, but I think it's a time machine. Daniel sent us here to stop them from completing it. Problem is, it's protected by some kind of energy shield. One of his people told me they were building a conduit. Find it. Destroy it. You must not succeed. Stop.
Okay, so that was the fantasy part of the show. Now we're going to get to reality. Fire in the Sky with Travis Walton. Now some of you may snicker and go, well, that's fantasy too. The movie Made was based on a true story. No matter who tries to debunk it, there's one thing they can't debunk. All these guys passed lie detector tests. They all did. Every single one of them. Travis Walton himself has been subjected to at least 5 or 6, and he keeps passing them. That alone proves their case. So here's some cool info. This is a little bit of Travis to him on stage, where he starts getting into his story, and it seems pretty genuine to me. And like I said, that lie detector test kind of cements it for me. Fire in the Sky, Travis Walton. Revisited and updated.
Thanks for coming. How many people saw the movie? Well, I guess by now you probably realize that they got a little creative there and changed some things. But I am looking in the future possibly getting a remake of the movie and getting them to tell it how it really happened. But for now, that's what I'm going to do. November 5th, 1975, a day that changed my life forever. I was working in the woods with a crew of 6 other guys. There were 7 of us all together. In the movie they only had 6, but we put in a long day and it was starting to get dark. We loaded up our equipment and we're headed home. We're driving along this rough dirt road and everybody was talking away. In the movie, it looked like everybody was kind of dozing off, but we hadn't gone very far down the road, and so, we were wide awake. We'd just recently been, doing vigorous physical work, and so our senses were as awake as you can get. And I noticed this light up to our right. The road we were on was paralleling the ridge going south back up towards the rim road, and the crest of the ridge was to our right and a little higher than the road itself. But when I noticed this light coming through the trees, it wasn't like immediately it was so alarming that everybody said, "What's that?" I was looking, and before I said anything to anybody else, one by one, all these little conversations that were going on amongst the crew dropped off, and everybody was looking in the same direction. And we were wondering what that was, and it was deer hunting season, so I thought that maybe there was some hunters camped there. But the light was coming from higher than where ground level would be. So I could see a break in the trees up ahead where the light was coming across the road. I urged Mike to, hurry up, get up there so we can see, what's going on, because people were saying, "What is that?" And this is part of the movie where they were fairly accurate. As soon as we got to where that light was crossing the road, there it was. It was unmistakable. This object was hovering less than 100 feet away. The skeptics were later saying, "Oh, they saw the planet Jupiter," and stupid things like that. Didn't look anything like swamp gas. This was a distinct metallic object hovering less than 100 feet away. Alan Dallas yelled out, "It's a flying saucer," and I called for Mike to stop the truck. Because I was thinking, this is a, incredible thing, but, so often when we're in the woods and you caught sight of a deer or bear or something, you call the rest of the crew attention to it, and before they could even look, it'd be gone. They might not even see what you saw. So that's kind of what I was thinking. When I threw open the door and started towards it, I thought it would be gone before I got very close. It was kind of a brazen act, all right, and the guys in the truck were pretty alarmed by what I was doing, and started yelling at me almost immediately to come back to the truck. And myself, I was wrestling with some misgivings about what I was doing, because it didn't leave like I expected it to. And so I was kind of stuck with that one. There's the crew: Mike, Ken Peterson, Alan Dallas, the Black Sheep. Been in and out of trouble ever since. I heard recently that he's back in trouble. But there's Dwayne Smith and John Gled. I recently had him on an interview with me on the NBC Today show back on the 12th of this month. And they did a pretty fair job of it. And anybody that saw that, I'd encourage everybody to please get in touch with the Today Show and express some appreciation for having got it right for a change, because the media needs encouragement when they get it right, because so often they've got to have that little snicker at the end or some sort of a negative slant. But anyway, and then on the bottom right was Steve Pierce. I hadn't heard from him in many years, back since right after it happened, and he got in touch with me here last year, and was interested in talking about it again. I've been trying to find Dwayne Smith and Alan Dallas again, to get their, pardon me, their current perspectives on things. But, as recently as when I talked to them last, along about the time the movie was made, everybody was, had pretty much come to terms with what happened to us. Anyway, I may as well tell you about that right there. There's this kind of a coincidence. Found this map, a topographical map. It had divided up the state into all these different areas, and just one of the many coincidences surrounding this incident. The area that they designated for where this happened was Area 51. Go figure. maybe the map maker's idea of a joke, but this is how it looked to me when I got up close to it. And it was incredible, an incredible sight. And John Gillette here on the Today Show that just aired remarked about how to him it looked so perfect. He said it was like a new Corvette. It was when I was just standing there in awe of this thing, looking up at it. It was metallic in some areas and glowing in other areas. What you see on the bottom of it here, looking up at this angle, are reflections of the trees and everything. But it was smooth like glass, but this light kind of lit up everything with kind of a strange sort of a glow. It gave it a kind of a strange feeling. The sound it was making was really very difficult to describe, because there was a sort of a rumble, a real deep rumble that you could almost feel more than hear. And the same thing with the higher notes. They were like off the range of human hearing. So, those kind of sounds, when you turn your head, it doesn't change that much, which gives a kind of where's this coming from, kind of a strange feeling. But when I got up close, the guys were really getting very anxious and swearing at me and telling me to get away from there. And it suddenly got louder and it started to move. It was kind of with a little rocking motion as it rose up, and that scared me more than I was already scared. But there was this pile of logging debris, and that was the reason I had stopped. I got about as close as I could looking up at it without running over this big pile of logs. And so when it started to move, I jumped down behind a log there, and they were saying, "Run, get out of here, let's go." And I didn't need to be told. I was trying to figure out, how to get to safety and leave the relative safety of the cover behind the log. But I was down in a crouch, and I raised up to sprint back to the truck, and at that moment, bam! It was just like I'd been hit and didn't see it coming. It was really kind of a stunning blow, sort of a feeling. Just like numbness really quickly spread through me, and I blacked out. But the crew said that it was like this beam came out of the bottom of this craft and hit me, but it was like I'd stepped on a landmine, or like a grenade had gone off, and the explosion threw me back through the air. I've been saying it threw me back 10 feet, but Steve, when he called me up, he was saying no, it was 20 feet. But whatever it was, they said that it looked to them the way I didn't protect myself when I hit, and the way my body was limp, that they thought it had killed me. And they, were yelling as much back and forth to each other and screaming at Mike to get him out of there. And so they took off. And a lot of talks, I've run into people who have sort of disparaged the crew for not standing their ground there, but I always want to add that I find no fault with these guys for having taken off like that, because they thought I was dead and they thought I was they were next, and so what good would it do them to get themselves killed rescuing somebody who's already dead? So it's perfectly understandable. They took off, dang near wrecked the truck several times getting away from there, and they once they got close to the rim road, they'd stop briefly, but they said that they caught sight of some hunters and went trying to catch the truck and see if they could get some people with some guns to help them. I guess even then they knew that they were going to have to go back and see what they could do. They were unable to catch the deer hunters, so they did return to the site, and they had a lot of fear, approaching it. Somebody said they thought they saw the object leaving, but it was only when they actually got there that they, confirmed that it didn't seem to be there anymore. But then neither was I, and they said they made a search. At one point, Mike, really fell to his knees and broke down crying, and Alan didn't want to go to the authorities right away. He figured that they ought to just go get some friends with some guns and come back, make a search, and then if they couldn't find anything, report it. But Mike and Ken said, no, we gotta, what if Travis is never found? How'll that look if we don't go report it right away? So they called the local deputy, and he came down and he called the sheriff in, and the sheriff said that he was immediately struck with that these guys had been through something really traumatic. But apparently all the lawmen, being lawmen, suspected that there had been some foul play, and that this was just a cover story for why no one was going to see me again. During this time, and in my recent conversation with John, he was saying that what the lawmen did is they separated the crew up, and as the crew were helping with the search, one deputy or officer with each of the men, and they were basically all pushing the men to confess to the murder. John said, he says, come on, just tell us what really happened so we can all go home and get this over with. But so the men got really tired of the accusations, and they said, we'll take any test you want. Give us sodium pentothal lie detector tests. We're telling the truth. We did not kill him. We saw what we saw. And so the sheriff heard about that and set up a lie detector test with the state police, Department of Public Safety, a polygraph examiner came up and tested all the men there at the jail, at the courthouse. And so when they passed, it was new theories, and people were desperate to explain this away any way they could. Theories that all the men were hallucinating on drugs, that I'd had a transitory psychosis, that the hypnotist that I saw later had implanted memories, but kind of getting ahead of myself here. The first thing I recall after being hit by the beam was waking up real slowly. I was in a lot of pain. I was in and out of consciousness for quite a while. I don't know how long, but I didn't know where I was at first. And then, I remembered approaching the object, and I thought that maybe I'd been hurt somehow and that the crew had brought me to the hospital. So I assumed that I was in a hospital. I could feel they had this something across my chest, and I was on some kind of a raised surface, you know, a bed or a gurney or something, operating table, and it hurt so bad, and I was having trouble breathing. You know, couldn't get enough air. I felt like I was suffocating. But there was a light above me, and I didn't want to move too much because of the pain. I thought maybe I'd make things worse if I moved, but I could hear the sounds of movement around me, and I thought that these were just doctors. And I was having trouble focusing my eyes. This light above me wasn't all that bright, but it kind of hurt to look at it because, you know, the pain in my head and chest was pretty intense. And but I looked to my right, and I saw this face, and then I could focus on it, and this was not a doctor. You know, I was looking into the face of this this creature, and I just flipped out. You know, the surge of fear gave me enough strength to move, but it was still very hard to move. I lifted my arm up to knock it away from me, but it was more of a push than anything. And he fell back into the other one, and it was lighter and softer than I expected, but I was still just so terrified. And a lot of people don't understand the degree of fear that I was experiencing, but all these things combined to make me react negatively in a way far more uncontrollably than I probably would have had it not happened that way. See, I'm in all this pain. I'm struggling to breathe. It's dimly lit in a very small, cramped room. It's humid, and you know, if you can't catch your breath, that's probably the most panic-inducing thing that there is, and that's why, you know, waterboarding is so effective at getting information out of terrorists. You know, because nothing will make you more afraid than that. It's on a very basic, instinctive level. But when I rolled off the table and staggered back away from them, they came around the table towards me, and I fell back against the. There was kind of a workbench or a shelf, low shelf there against the back wall, and they were coming towards me. So I just grabbed something off of that, and I struck out at them. They weren't close enough to hit, but I was just screaming threats, and it must have worked because they stopped. They sort of extended their hands towards me. And the thing that really stands out in my mind, the thing that was the main feature of my nightmares for so long after that, was those eyes, the way they looked at me. And these were not black obsidian eyes like you hear reported quite so often. They had pupils and irises and eyelids, because I saw them blink. And but their gaze, for some reason, it seemed like they were looking right into me in a really disturbing kind of way. It wasn't like the expression. There wasn't really much expression to their face. It wasn't frozen like a mask, but it still was a kind of a detached sort of look that, you know, I just felt. It's really hard to describe the emotion that caused in me. It was just very disturbing. You know, when you're around somebody that you feel doesn't care about you one way or the other, they don't have to be hostile. We still kind of interpret that as negative, you know, as unfriendly. But I was thinking about, there was only one door, and it was beyond them. So I was thinking of how I could fight my way past them and escape. But before I could move, they turned and went out the door. And there was this little passageway that went to the right. So, I was afraid they'd come back, so I went to the door and went to the left, just looking for a way out. Well, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was in a total, just blind panic that there was no clear thought to it. I was thinking, open a door and get out. Maybe in the back of my mind, I was thinking this thing was still in the woods and I could jump to the ground real easily, but it's probably a good thing I wasn't able to open a door, but that probably wasn't the best thing to do right at that time. But I went down this passageway and I was really kind of in this weird sort of a panic because I couldn't see very far ahead. It curved to the right so far I couldn't see very much in front of me or behind me. So I was, kind of torn between sprinting away from these creatures that I woke up to and whatever freedom I might find ahead. But I came to a door, and there was a room, and I could see, what I took to be doors, the outlines of doors on the other side, and piecing together the floor plan of what I saw later, I figured out that those probably doors wouldn't have been close to the outside of this craft. But at that point, I didn't really know where I was very disoriented, and I was hoping those would be a door out of this craft. And the curious thing about this room is that when I entered it, the closer I got to the middle, the darker it became, and I could see points of light on the walls, floor, ceiling, everything. It was either like you could see through these surfaces or it was projected onto there, some kind of a map or a planetarium type situation. But the chair in the middle had controls on it, and so my main interest was to try to find a way to open a door, and I was hoping that some of these buttons would open one of these doors. But most of them didn't seem to do anything. Nothing that I could detect, but moving the lever caused the star pattern to all shift at once. The stars stayed in the same pattern, but the whole thing moved, and I was already unsteady on my feet, and that really gave me vertigo. But so I was thinking of pushing another one of these buttons, and then something caught my attention from the door that I had come through, and I saw this man standing there. Now, from the door, looking over this guy's shoulder, you normally would not see the star pattern because you could really only see that from near the chair. At least that's what I was thinking, but it's possible that it just was activated by being near the chair. Anyway, I turned around, I saw him, and I thought, that right off, I thought it was somebody from NASA or Air Force or somebody to rescue me from this situation. And so I took him to be a human rescuer, and I run up to him and started babbling all these questions, and
Justice in the world!
Hi, this is Garrett Wong, and I'm looking forward to working with Stephen Crawford and Emma Gold Productions on a new project, Factor Theory Live.
Responding, and I thought, well, maybe it's the helmet. You know, he can't hear me or can't talk, or something. Somebody to rescue me from this situation, and so I took him to be a human rescuer, and I run up to him and started babbling all these questions, and but he wasn't responding. And I thought, well, maybe it's the helmet. You know, he can't hear me or can't talk with that on. So I went with him, and he seemed to be in a hurry, and I was pretty weak and unsteady on my feet. But he took me out of this craft, and at this point, it was parked inside of this large room, a hangar-like room, because there were these glowing panels that curved from one wall up into the ceiling. So it was shaped kind of like a quarter of a cylinder. But the biggest relief was getting outside of this thing. The air was fresher and easier to breathe. And I tried to look around, but he seemed to be in a hurry and was pulling me along. And I really had to think about my walking because I was still hurting a lot and unsteady on my feet. But there were other craft in there, at least two I know for sure, that were disc-shaped but shinier and more rounded. So I don't know whether this was a building or part of a larger craft, or how long the craft that I was in had been inside of this area. But he hurried me out of this big room, down a hallway to a room where he left me with some people who were dressed like him. And it was just a sort of a blue coverall that without any kind of insignia, no flags or rank markings or anything like that. But the fact that these other people didn't have any helmets on made me think that, well, maybe finally somebody can answer my questions. I'm kind of exaggerating the thinking part because I was so in total panic and my head was so foggy that I wasn't thinking real clear. I was basically hysterical. And so, but I did try to talk to these people, and they didn't say a word, not to me or not to each other. They started leading me over and trying to get me to lay down on this table. And I had had enough of these table things, you know. But I was so weak and they were so strong that they didn't have too much trouble getting me onto that table. But one of them appeared to be female, had what looked like an oxygen mask that she put over my face. And I was struggling, not too successfully. And I did manage to jerk my hand away and get it under the edge of the mask, but before I could pull it away, I blacked out. Next thing I know, I came to cold air, lying face down. My hand was laying on my arm. I wasn't in the road, but I was enough on the pavement where I wasn't off in the brush. But I saw a light above, and I looked to see where the light was coming from, but it went off before I could see what was actually lit. So it might have been some kind of a light or a hatch closing or something. But I just saw this silvery, rounded surface hovering above me there. So it wasn't exactly in the middle of the road, kind of partially off to one side. And then it just shot straight up, right past the trees. It sort of stirred the leaves around and moved the limbs, but it was silent. It shot up, and it was tiny before, in seconds. Just amazing that something could move that fast without, you know, breaking the sound barrier or something, you know. But I was just relieved that I was back in familiar surroundings. A lot of people wouldn't feel too comfortable being standing alone in the dark in the middle of the woods, but it was a big improvement for me. I looked down and I saw these lights, and I figured out, I recognized the lights of Heber, and that's not where I live. This is the town nearest where it happened, but 15 miles from where the incident occurred. So I don't know where I got the strength. I was a little wobbly when I stood up, but I ran down into the town looking to get help. First building I came to with lights on, there was smoke coming out of the chimney. I pounded on the door and nobody came. So I went on down. There was probably a closer phone than where I went, but I didn't want to go back into the side streets that were, darker. So I ran on down across the second bridge, and I came to a row of telephone booths. I managed to call my family. The first phone booth I came into, though, was out of order, and I was at the end of my rope, strength-wise, but. I went into the next phone booth and called my brother-in-law, and he thought it was a prank call. I started to hang up on me. I think you got the wrong number, wise guy. So I screamed and made him understand that, it was me. And he seemed kind of stunned, but he said, okay, I'll get your brother, I'll come and get you. And so, to me, it seemed like hardly any time at all until the lights of the truck were shining out there, and they came and got me out of the bottom of that phone booth where I'd collapsed. But it had to have been at least 30 or 40 minutes, so I was probably unconscious part of that time. But found out later, the skeptics were doubtful of everything. They were claiming really someplace else, but the sheriff, the phone operator, listened in on the phone call because, you didn't have to have coins to talk to the operator in that part of the country at that time, and so the operator just listened in on the call and called the sheriff and reported it, and so the sheriff sent a man out there. But my brother had already taken me away, and I got in the truck and I said something, and he said, because I thought this was still the same night, and he said, Travis, feel your face. It's been 5 days. But see, I was trying to tell him what happened. I was talking, I just broke down. I just couldn't get it out. I'm thinking now that the reason I was taken aboard was because there was no choice. I would have been dead.
When you hear about someone being abducted by aliens, it usually brings up the sense that it is being done against the individual's will and seems innately violent. The abductee is poked and prodded for research, then left almost discarded. This is how the Travis Walton case was essentially portrayed in the movie Fire in the Sky, and this was in fact how Travis interpreted the incident himself. However, recently it seems that Travis has re-examined his beliefs and is coming to a somewhat different conclusion.
I used to accept the terminology abduction, but now I'm calling it more of an ambulance call. I really think it was an accident. I don't think they were firing at me or, trying to, stun me or punish me or anything like that. I think it was some kind of an effect of the propulsion. They were powering up to leave and just get away from us. And I raised up and got too close, and I think some kind of energy just found its way to ground. In hindsight, I'm thinking that a lot of the terror and a lot of the fear that I was reacting with and the pain I was experiencing had nothing to do with anything that was being inflicted on me, and it was just sort of an accident of circumstance. The crest of the ridge was to our right and a little, higher than the road itself.
When he started speaking about his experience more than 3 decades ago, the subject was looked upon with much ridicule, and through his many lectures and travels, Travis has been able to connect with others that have had similar experiences.
I really feel a kindred spirit with these people that have, gone through the kind of emotional impact. Because, prior to this, even though everybody's probably thought about it to some extent, to know for sure suddenly changes your whole perspective on the whole, life in general. I came to realize there's some very good cases out there, some very important things, some people that really ring a familiar bell with me. And there are other cases that are, I have my own doubts about. But I resolved not to, speak publicly about the difference between the two because, it's just not fair to do so without having done the research. When you run into people that have experienced something so profound, it is kind of validating.
Walton has carried this emotional burden with him through most of his adult years, and some of the torment can still be seen in his eyes. However, his sense of confidence is also evident, something that is a result of years of contemplation and coming to terms with his experience. Having Steve Pierce and John Goulet speak out about the event is also something that has helped give Walton a sense of solace.
I think having the other guys, validate, I'm not just alone. I feel like a broken trail for them, but at the same time, having them come along and add to, what I'm saying, really does help a lot.
Recently, Open Minds brought attention to the polygraph test that was administered by law enforcement shortly after the incident. And as technology improves, Travis continues to take these tests.
Here recently, I underwent 2 more tests from a firm that does work for the Albuquerque Police Department, New Mexico State Prisons, and even the United States Marshals. And this was state-of-the-art methods, state-of-the-art equipment, and I passed both tests again. One thing that people tend to overlook is the polygraph evidence, to have this many people passing a polygraph test on a single issue, back at the time was judged, the odds against that would have been 1,000,000 to 1, in the words of the president of the American Polygraph Association.
The truth of why this happened to Walton will probably never be known, and one can only speculate as to what really goes on inside someone after such an occurrence. Walton's persistence to try and make sense of something so profound has given him a deeper understanding of humanity, an understanding we should all respect.
Having gone through this thing and trying to adjust to it, of course, it was a deep, emotionally troubling process, but it was forcing a kind of maturity on me, forced me to develop a lot of a more complete philosophy, a more broader outlook that I probably wouldn't have come to until I'd lived a lot more years. I think that this experience really has given me a great deal of insight about society, and people in general. I have come to realize that with the burden of dealing with the experience comes a great deal of responsibility, an opportunity to maybe, make something good come of it. And so I'll hang in there a little longer.